Yeah, thanks for having me here. I'm here to finish off the talks before lunch, and I'll just talk to you about some potential applications and maybe some optimistic possibilities of using drones in small private woodlot management. So just some quick background, remotely sensed imagery, or remotely sensed data, and I'll talk specifically about imagery, is really a cornerstone and is a crucial management tool at any scale. And it lets you tie what you see on the ground with everything else around you. So it's super important no matter what scale of management that you're working at. There's many sources of this imagery that's available. Different resolutions for different needs and different costs of the different resolutions. And that choice depends entirely on what you're looking for. And again, I'll just keep in mind through all this that this is intended to supplement but not replace boots on the ground. You're always going to need someone on the ground collecting data or looking at things. It's never going to be solved by just flying a drone over your woodlot and you're going to get all your information. Anybody that tells you that's possible is lying to you. So I talked about the different sources of imagery. This is satellite imagery. It's Sentinel, and it's freely available. You can download these images from the internet, and they're collected roughly every 8 days. So you get pretty good recency on it. But this is quite coarse. It's a 10-meter pixel size, so depending on what you're looking at, you may not be able to see as much as you want, especially if you're at the small woodlot scale. So you can see roads, and you might be able to pick out hardwood and softwood from this, and openings. You see there's a little opening here. But it's quite coarse, but it's free, and it's available, again, roughly every 8 days. So we can get a little bit better with the imagery. This is our provincially collected air photography, and this is pretty good. This gets you pretty fine. It's a 20 centimeter pixel size, I think. So you can see a lot of detail from this if you zoom in. But the problem with this imagery is it's collected roughly every 10 years, so that's a long time. A lot of things can happen in 10 years. So this type of imagery may not be suitable for your needs because it could be quite out of date. And this is just another satellite imagery option from Google Earth. You can go on and see this. I think this is usually updated every 1 to 3 years. And here we get into about a meter resolution, so it's pretty good, and you can zoom in and you can see some pretty good detail. But you're sort of at the mercy of Google whenever they get around to updating it. You don't really get to pick. And so now we get into some drone imagery, and this is that same lot we flew it with a drone, and what you see on the left here is an ortho, so it's just many photos stitched into one image. And this is zoomed in here, so you can see, I hope you guys can see it there. It might not be as clear on the projector as I wanted it to be, but you can get an immense amount of detail because we're taking photos at about, these were taken at 400 feet, so the pixel size is about 5 centimeters, and you can get even less than that. So there's a crazy amount of detail in here. And depending on your needs, this might be super informative or useful to you. It really depends on the scale that you're managing at or the scale that you're interested in your woodlot at. So I'll just contrast the 3 sources of imagery here. This is that same section zoomed in with the Sentinel imagery, 10-meter resolution. Here's the Google Earth imagery, 1.5 meter resolution. And then here's the drone imagery. And you can see there's a few different things that aren't really apparent here. One that stands out to me is this little patch of, I think it's yellow birch here. I can't really see it on here. I'm not a great photo interpreter, but I can't really see it on this imagery. And then on the Sentinel imagery, it's almost non-existent there. So this might be a little more useful. You can really pick out individual trees from this imagery. Like I said, there's a gap or a patch of yellow birch up here. You see a few dead trees spattered through here. These are probably pines, and then you've got some bigger maple crowns. So there's an immense amount of detail available in this imagery, and it's relatively easy to do with just regular color images. There's nothing super fancy about these drones. It's a lot of them are just taking regular photos.
What year was that?
July, I believe. This is a County of Annapolis block where they're doing a harvest that the Western Woodlot Services Co-op was putting together for them. And yeah, I believe this was June. And that's another important thing too, is you kind of get the satellite imagery. I don't know if you noticed that it's kind of dark there because they collect it when the satellite is in a position to take that image. And if you're getting drone imagery done, you can be selective with your days, and you can take it on days where it's overcast but bright, and you'll get really crisp images and good detail. So all that to say, you can do more with drones than just take nice landscape photos. Don't get me wrong, it's really nice for photos like this. And you can get a fair bit of information from an oblique shot that, someone who just has a drone, they take it off and they fly it around and they take a few photos. That can be valuable, but you can go a lot further if you do mapping with them. And so there's drones or ways to make cheap drones into mapping drones, and basically what you do is you set up an area of interest and you set things like your photo overlap, your front and side overlap between the photos and your height, and these are it's super easy to do. You set the drone up and you basically, once you have your flight loaded in, you press play and it goes along a pre-planned grid pattern that you can see here. So this was a 40 hectare block. It's about 100 acres for those that like that better. It took 35 minutes to fly and it took 1,400 photos. So it's a lot of photos and it's a lot of data, but what you can produce with that is really interesting. So this is just one image that would have been taken from a flight area, again around 300 feet I think for this one. And so in this one image, again you can see this is a younger plantation, but you can almost segment the crowns. You can pick out individual treetops. But then when we're taking photos with high overlap like that, you can stitch it together into one image, and you can see your whole woodlot, larger areas. So that red box there is the extent of the previous picture, but we see the similar level of detail for the entire area. So that's really taking it one step further than having nice photos of your woodlot. If you have mapping done, someone can produce orthos like this that show you the whole picture in great detail. And this is another interesting thing you can do, again, with just the color imagery. There's a lot you can do with that. And what you're seeing here is a canopy height model, and so it's just the canopy height in meters, and it's estimated from the photography. It uses triangulation because we have so many photos. It can pick out different points at the same point from different photos, and so it can give you X, Y, and Z coordinates. That's how it's building the canopy height model. So what you're seeing here is this was a gap shelter wood treatment, and the purple is the ground or heights close to zero. Green, yellow, and red would be heights around 20 to 24 meters. So that can be a really informative tool for either planners if you're planning any harvest, or just general interest of heights on your woodlot. It's a really great visualization. And this is zoomed in of that the county block that I showed you before. Again, up here in the corner is that patch of yellow birch that I think is yellow birch, and you can see it's a little bit taller than the rest. And then over here in this section, it might not be super apparent on the imagery that there's some gaps, but when you have the canopy height model, see that purple there, it's very clear that there's some canopy gaps there. So again, it could be super useful for planning or just general interest of knowing what's on your woodlot. And there's some other things you can do. This isn't a blurry image. This is a 3D model, again, built from the imagery that you can view, and it's quite easy. You can load this onto basically a website, and you can get a link, and you can go and you can pan around and basically look at your woodlot in 3D. This is really cool, and there's some folks that are working on ways to make information like this. If you have a woodlot that's been flown with a drone, they're working on making information like this accessible. So the other thing you can do, this is quite common in agriculture work, multispectral imagery, and that's a big word in NDVI, but basically it can tell you things like how green or healthy something is, and things like what you see in the image here, roads will show up as close to 0, and really healthy green will show up as values of 1. So we'll zoom in a bit here. Here's the imagery on the right. You can see it might not stand out to you, but there's wind throw here, the root plate's there, and then the dead crown is here. But on the multispectral imagery, it sticks out like a sore thumb. You can see the stem there and the root plate and the crown. So that could be useful for health assessments, and you may see things from above that you don't see from the ground, like crown dieback would stand out like a sore thumb on that map. And you see there's a few dead trees here that, again, they're really apparent in the multispectral imagery. And there's a lot of overlap with agriculture. So if someone has a drone that they're doing mapping work for agriculture with, it would probably work for this sort of thing. And the last thing I'll finish off on here, so I don't hold you up into lunch too long, is probably something that's not realistic right now, but technology is improving and getting cheaper all the time, and that's drone-based LiDAR. And so what you're seeing here is a canopy height model that, instead of from imagery, it's a laser scanner basically, and it's sending out a large amount of laser pulses and recording the position of those. And what you see here is a side profile of this tree that was flown with the drone-based LiDAR, and you get an immense amount of detail. Like, it's an almost perfect reconstruction of the crown. You can see the stem profile, and it's forked here. So there's a lot of information there, and how it scales down to a small private woodlot, whether it's affordable, I don't know yet, but like I said, the technology is improving all the time. So I'll just show you real quick here. You can measure, so I measured the tree height from that LiDAR scan. It's saying it's 21.7 meters, and I also measured the crown width. So that level of detail, you could almost estimate diameter. Like, you can see the stem there. Again, I think someday we'll get to that level of information being readily accessible, but it's not there yet. So if you're looking to have this done, what you should look for, I don't know what exists out there in terms of capacity right now, but you should look for someone with a license, not just somebody with a small drone who does real estate photography. Typically, they might not be able to do mapping for you. So that'd be the key thing to look for, is they're licensed with advanced or basic, and they can do mapping work, and they've done mapping work in the past. And then you really need to think about what you need and what you want, and what you're willing to pay. How soon do you need it? So the more area, this is just kind of I don't know what the costs will be, but relative cost. The higher resolution or data complexity, it's probably going to cost a little bit more. The more area you need, it's obviously going to cost a little bit more. So, when you're thinking about, do I want just a few photos, a few landscape photos of my woodlot? Do I want mapping done? Maybe I want multispectral. Maybe I'd like a canopy height model. Things like those are going to influence the cost. Again, whatever that is, I'm not sure I couldn't even hazard a guess as to what it might cost to have this done for your woodlot, because I don't know who's doing this sort of mapping yet. And then some challenges and limitations are going to be maybe finding contractors, just because I don't think that capacity exists much yet. It could be cost prohibitive. And then weather conditions as well. I had hoped to fly, I was down here last Saturday, and I had hoped to fly the woodlot out back here. Saturday was the only day that I was around that it was not raining. It was too windy on Saturday to get good images, so the drone wouldn't take off. So it's not like, you got to pick your days with this, and it seems like most of the days it's either windy or raining. Clear days are very, very hard to find. And then there's also area or size limitations. 100 or 200 hectares in a day is a reasonable amount. Thousands of hectares with drones is getting into difficult, probably too large to map. So it can be scale limited. Yeah, so in summary, high resolution drone imagery is a very useful management tool, and just based on what I'm hearing today, I think it's probably the right scale for a lot of you. Is you really want tree level detail from the imagery, and I think it would be really, really useful to have. And even the simplest product, where it's just one image of your entire woodlot in an ortho mosaic, is probably very useful for either a planner or, again, your own personal interest. And the more complex data is probably difficult to justify, but in the future, things will improve, and we'll probably get to a point where it's realistic and affordable to have things like LiDAR flown for your woodlot. And the technology is evolving and becoming more accessible. So I don't know if we have time for questions, but I'll probably park myself. I don't really have a table, but maybe I'll hang out on the other side of the booth over here by Sean and Simon to take any questions, and I'll have my laptop and I'll get the drone out, and we can come and have a quick closer look at some of the maps that I've made.